Welcome to Swine Time with Pipestone. I'm your host, Dr. Spencer Wayne. Thanks for tuning in to Swine Time. Swine Time podcast was created for the pork industry and individual pork producers around the country, so make sure to bookmark this page to make sure you'll thoroughly be informed regarding pork industry news, advancements in animal care, and how to enhance your productivity. Today I have, again, my guest, Dr. Joseph Yaros. Joseph was my guest here on the previous podcast where we discussed herd level disease elimination. Essentially, how do you do a closure elimination for PRRS or PED or mycoplasma? I've invited him back to cover, maybe following up from that, bigger picture thoughts or bigger picture ideas on, well, what could we do for disease elimination of other diseases, or what could we maybe do as a larger geography, a state or a national level disease elimination? Why or why not would we be able to do these things? So I'll turn it over to Joseph a little bit here. Joseph, welcome back. And
thank you, Spencer.
And would you cover a little bit of history? And since I'm older than you, I'll chime in on the history too. We've eliminated certain bugs from the national sow herd or national pig herd. And then we've got things that we haven't eliminated, but maybe we could. So why don't you go over the history of things that we've had that we no longer deal with, just to kind of background us on things we've gotten rid of.
So for sure, over the course of history, especially in the swine industry, we've been focusing on disease elimination forever, and think about things that we've eliminated in the past. You know, for one, back in about 30, 40 years ago, we started putting pigs indoors. Big change was we stopped seeing internal parasites. Just able to cut out that life cycle, not having worms replicate in the dirt, and with pigs no longer consuming dirt, not really seeing any more of those internal parasites. So I think that's a pretty big one. That was also, in a sense, a pretty easy fix and something that shouldn't be coming back. On top of that, we had atrophic rhinitis that was affecting people back in the day pretty significantly. And Spencer, how did we get rid of atrophic rhinitis? Help me understand.
Well, I'll tell you what I know, which is I don't think anybody knows. It just disappeared. So you were kind of going through a few things we've gotten rid of, and like atrophic rhinitis, when I was in vet school and I first got out, you would see it somewhat regularly, and then all of a sudden you didn't see it at all. And really across different genetics companies and different systems and farms, it just went away. I see one case every 2 years now where I think, something's kind of goofy about that snout, but it just went away. There were vaccines for Pasteurella and Bordetella that people were using, but it just went away. And so there's probably somebody that knows. I don't know. It just disappeared. That's a little bit of a mystery there. You mentioned worms, Joseph. I do still see worms in sow herds, and it depends on how they were stocked or what the sourcing was, but I don't think it's uncommon to see worms, and a lot of farms still worm, but it's got to be a lot less than it was. I rarely see worms in finishing barns, once every few years. So some of the things went from being common to being extremely uncommon, but probably not gone. What about pseudorabies? You never lived in pseudorabies time, did you?
It depends on what geographic area you're talking about. We don't have pseudorabies here in the U.S., but there are other countries that are dealing with it on a regular basis, and you know, we're very fortunate to have all the producers pull together. And I remember you saying earlier when you got out of vet school, it was a big deal working on that, bleeding thousands and thousands of pigs and herds on a weekly basis.
Yeah, when I graduated, we went out and bled a lot of sows and boar studs to try to confirm negative status of these herds that had gone through a vaccination and test and remove program for pseudorabies. And it just hit me as I'm talking to you, acting like I'm the old guy who's seen pseudorabies. You've seen a lot more pseudorabies than I have, because you go to China at some frequency, and so you see things over there that a lot of people here would never see. So you see pseudorabies now, just not here, which is great. Other things.
Yeah, from on that note, Spencer, reason we were able to eliminate pseudorabies here in the U.S. was because they made a really good vaccine for it, and the vaccine allowed you to understand if a pig had a actual infection or if it was just generating an immune response from the vaccine. And if we think about some things that are circulating around the global world, specifically thinking of African swine fever, that's one of the big differences between that virus and some of the others that we deal with. There is no vaccine for that. And with that, I think it's going to be a long time before people have a good understanding about how to eliminate that virus from a global perspective or from a national perspective. Granted, we don't have it here in the U.S., but in the countries that do, it might be a long road.
short of depopulating a unit that gets African swine fever, is there any chance to get rid of it through a closure method or things that we look at herd closure? There's no method outside of just truly depopulating a sow unit to get rid of this bug. Is that true?
Yeah, as of now, I know people are trying a number of different things in the East overseas, but as of now, I would say that's the only way people have successfully eliminated the virus, and doing a full depop. Generally, like with most viruses, it's 100% effective.
Okay. Well, that's at least works then, and it might be a lot of downtime of the barn being empty before you feel comfortable putting pigs in, but at least you could get rid of it. Jumping back to the U.S. and things that maybe we have not tried to get rid of. You got flu, you got strep suis, Haemophilus, APP, those type of things. They're kind of either in the background or in the future, or however you want to look at them. But let's start with flu. Why would we not try to get rid of flu aggressively at sow farms?
No, that's a great question. If we think about, just like with pseudorabies, how we're able to eliminate it, a very good vaccine. And when it comes to influenza and it comes to PRRS, there are vaccines that are effective for a decrease in clinical signs against these viruses, but we're still experiencing the problem. You can't eliminate it 100%. You're still going to have some issues. So for one, not necessarily a vaccine that can prevent disease, and secondarily, it continues to circulate in the farrowing house almost all the time.
Okay, so limited effectiveness of vaccines, heavy circulation. I would add in there that if we did eliminate it from a sow unit, which would be, I think, really difficult, the chances of bringing it back in just on people would be fairly high, so that we'd probably not be able to stay free of it. Versus these other things, flu can circulate in people and pigs and chickens and turkeys, and we can share these viruses. Strep. What about strep? Every farm's got strep. Is there a chance you could actually eliminate all the strep from a farm?
That's a great question. I know people are working on that. There are a range of autogenous vaccines out there that you can formulate specific for the strain of strep you might be dealing with. But just like many bacteria, just because you're seeing the effects of one doesn't mean that one is not hiding the effects of another. So it might be like a little whack-a-mole game. You knock one out and another one pops up. So I would say today, don't know of anyone who's had success eliminating strep from the herd, but it would sure would be nice.
How many, if you kind of sample tons of tons of samples within a barn, how many strains of strep would be within one single barn, one single sow unit?
That's a great question. In some of the testing I've done, I've found about a half dozen, but I know that there are many herds that will have more and many herds that will have less.
Okay, so just almost endless, the possibilities. It's incredibly complicated compared to a single strain of PRRS or a single strain of mycoplasma.
Yeah, just because you're dealing with, just because you find one in a pig doesn't mean it's the only one floating there.
Okay. One thing we didn't really talk about, but we could here spend a little time on, is PED. Dramatic disease is like the most dramatic thing that as a practitioner or a farmer you'll see at a sow unit. We've had it in a lot of barns and we've gotten rid of it in every barn. Is there any obstacle to getting rid of PED, at the farm level?
It's a virus that we've been very fortunate in eliminating, and especially in regards to seasonality, it does not survive well in summer heat. So that plays a big part in helping these eliminations. But as a whole, if you work to eliminate it, it seems that almost 100% of the time you can be effective at getting rid of it. I think that the wild card is there may just be some people who haven't necessarily made that decision to eliminate and have just been staying positive.
So that's really kind of the heart of all these bigger picture, more than one herd elimination efforts, is you might be able to get rid of it, but if your neighbor doesn't, then you get it again. And it boils down to that for all these things. And so you got to have either a really clean neighborhood or a very sparse barn population with no neighbors, or everybody gets on the same page and does the same thing at the same time. Joseph, I thank you for being here. So this podcast, we just covered broader questions of disease elimination, other bugs, how we might approach it, other experiences. Hopefully that added a little bit of context to the listeners, what they know about it now. And I want to thank you for being here. Joseph, thanks. I'd like to take a moment right now just to say thanks to any listeners out there for the feedback. Recently, I got some feedback from one of our Wildcat sow unit shareholders whose initials are LB, and he listens to these, so he'll know who he is. But I want to thank LB for the comments. Didn't want to embarrass him by giving his full name, but just to let you know, producer or outside audience floating out there wherever you are, feedback is really valuable. So if you've got ideas or topics you want us to cover, let us know. Email us. I think there's got to be a link on the website, or call me, or call whoever your Pipestone contact is, and let us know, and we'll cover that topic. Remember to our guests to subscribe to our podcast to get the latest Swine Time with Pipestone. You can find us at Spotify, iTunes, Google Music app, and your favorite podcast platform, and of course our website, pipevet.com. Join us next time for Swine Time.
Thank you, Spencer.